All right, now to give us more perspective on this, we're being joined by Mr. John Blank, who's a former foreign policy advisor to President Joe Biden, and he's joining us on this broadcast. Mr. Blank, thank you very much indeed, sir, for joining us on this broadcast. And let me, in fact, start off with this legal trouble that the Republican candidate, Donald Trump, is into. The indictment charge has been filed again, and this time around he's being referred to as a political candidate rather than as a former president. Do you think that's going to have any kind of an impact in terms of how the American public, of course, perceives Donald Trump?
Thank you for having me. I think that almost all American voters have already made up their mind about Donald Trump. They've seen what he did in his first term in office. They've seen what he has tried to do in refusing to leave office. They've seen his 2 impeachments. They've seen the evidence of his deep criminality, including his convictions. And I don't think it's going to really change a whole lot of minds either way.
You know, that's interesting because you say that the people have already made up their mind, and Donald Trump supporters would turn around and say that this is essentially a political witch hunt, and this is something that Donald Trump will try, use more to his advantage. But let's also talk about these pre-poll surveys, which are now showing that Kamala Harris appears to be closing the gap with Donald Trump on issues of economy and unemployment. The gap is now just 3%. But do you think, considering the baggage that Kamala Harris brings in as the current vice president, she can convince the American electorate that she can actually turn things around for the average American voter?
I think that's the key question. I think most Americans already know what they believe about Donald Trump. 40% will vote for him no matter what, somewhere in the 40s will vote for him no matter what, and somewhere in the 40s will vote against him no matter what. So it's really that relatively small group that are trying to decide, well, is Kamala Harris an acceptable alternative? And I think that she has every reason to be optimistic because the poll numbers have been trending in the right direction. But let's be clear, this will be an incredibly narrow margin right up until Election Day, no matter how it eventually turns out.
Now, this point of time, because you've also been a former foreign policy advisor to Joe Biden, this is also going to be a big question that will be playing on the minds of a lot of the Democrats. The foreign policy of Joe Biden, which will be the legacy that Kamala Harris will be taking to the presidential elections, how much do you think that will weigh in on the minds of an average Democrat? The war in Ukraine, the war in the Gaza Strip, the disastrous pullout from Afghanistan, all of these things are, of course, something that will go down as the legacy of Joe Biden, and by virtue of that, of Kamala Harris.
Yes, American voters tend not to make their presidential choices on the basis of foreign policy. As someone who is passionately devoted to foreign policy, I kind of wish they would, but the fact is they don't. However, this is going to be a margin of error election, so it is very much a real question. How much is President Biden's policy on Gaza going to hurt Kamala Harris? And I think particularly in states like Michigan, where there is a sector of the population, Arab Americans, citizens who are Muslim, who are progressive, a whole lot of others, where this really could provide the margin of success or of loss.
I think that's going to be very significant. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Jonah, for joining us and getting us that perspective there. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.